Order. We start with questions to the Secretary of State for Education, Daby.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will take questions 1, 5, 7, 18 and 21 together. We will all know somebody with special educational needs or disabilities and understand how vital it is to get a child with special educational needs and disabilities the right support early on. In recent years, we've seen a massive increase in special educational needs in our country, and that's why we've expanded funding to record levels at £10.5 billion, up 60% in the last 5 years, and why we're reforming the system to deal with the increase in demand, including the biggest investment in building special educational needs school places in our country's history.
Daby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Children in Lewisham are waiting on average 2.5 years to get an autism diagnosis. This is wrong and is unacceptable. This is also a national issue that is made worse by a shortage of clinical staff. The government is failing to recognise the seriousness of the shortage of educational psychologists. Can the Minister, Secretary, tell me why they have failed and what is being done to recruit more educational psychologists, as well as tackling the EHCP waiting times?
Secretary of State.
I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. Around half of new EHCP plans were issued within the statutory time limit of 20 weeks, and some local authorities are delivering over 90%. But of course, we do recognise the system is under pressure, both post the pandemic and the massive rise in demand for special educational needs support. That's why we've increased the budget. That's why we put an improvement plan in place. In regards to a particular question about educational psychologists, we are training 400 more educational standards, which is a big increase.
Russell-Moyle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a constituent, but it could be many of the constituents that come to me, who has a child with ADHD, autism and other severe learning difficulties. She has had to wait an awful long time for her EHCP plan for her child, and in the end the EHCP plan has listed the very school that says it cannot cope with the needs of that child. This happens routinely, where the school that says they can't cope is still listed on the EHCP. What is the Minister doing to ensure that councils and other people who do the EHCP aren't just ignoring what the school says and are actually putting down the schools that can cope with the needs? This child now only has 1 hour a week education. That's surely not good enough.
State.
No, we need to do all we can to support children with special educational needs. They are vulnerable and they do need the support, and they need the support as early as possible. We have got programmes in place to support local authorities, but the biggest thing that we're doing is actually increasing the number of special educational needs school places. This will be the largest increase in a generation, 60,000 more school places. And it's in stark contrast, actually, to when the Labour government were last in power, where the number of places reduced by 4,000. So that's something that we are very focused on doing. Many of those have already been delivered. Some of those are work in progress, and some of them will be in his area as well.
Alistair, stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Far too many families know what a battle it can be to secure an EHC assessment for their child. But for Forces families, this battle can become a recurring nightmare, as they're forced to restart the process all over again if required to move base before it completes. It can't be right that those who sacrifice so much for our country are so let down by the current assessment system. How can we put this right?
Secretary of State.
Of course, we're always looking to improve this system, and we do have an improvement plan in place. I'll take away specifically about people who move around from place to place. But the most important and fundamental thing that we can do is we've increased the budget, which is to now gone up to £10.5 billion. That's a 60% increase in the last few years. And also we're investing in building the right provision and educational psychologists and the workforce as well. So we do have a thorough plan in place, and we are working to deliver it.
Stephen Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Parents in Portsmouth are rightly concerned that fewer than half of primary school children in the city are achieving the expected standards in reading, writing and maths, while under the watch of the Lib Dem-run council, waiting lists for SEND support continue to rise. Does the Minister agree that families in Portsmouth deserve better than a council which is failing children and failing families?
Secretary of State.
Yes, and that's the Conservative government.
Margaret.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Royal College of Psychiatrists has found that autistic children are 28 times more likely to think about or attempt suicide than other children. Not getting the support they need can affect autistic children into their adult lives. This is a matter of extreme concern, as is the fact that more than 9,500 Wirral children were persistently absent from school in 2022-23, which is double pre-pandemic figures. And I note the Minister's earlier comments this morning, but what assessment has the Government made of the percentage of children in Wirral and across England who are missing from school, who have special educational needs and disabilities, and what specific measures will the Government take to address their needs?
Well, the Honourable Lady is right to identify that there is a crossover between special educational needs and often absence from schools, and then sometimes poor outcomes which can lead to mental health issues later on, which is why it really is important that we get early help to children as quickly as possible. So what we're doing about it is we have a special educational needs and alternative provision improvement plan. In terms of workforce, which is the most important thing on top of the places, we are training more SENCOs, we have changed the training for new teachers, we're making sure that we invest in a new MPQ to upskill teachers, we've got more educational psychologists, 400 more in training, and also more speech and language therapists. So there's a huge workforce part of the plan to improve our special educational needs offer.
Chair of the Select Committee, Robin Walker.
Thank you, Speaker. I welcome what Secretary of State has just said about the workforce. It is vitally important we get that into place. But a week on from the publication of the Buckland Review and 2 years on from the Education Select Committee's call to bolster careers support for children with SEN, can she update us on what ministers are doing and what the department is doing to work with DWP to provide wider opportunities for young people with autism?
Yes, we all know that most people with learning disabilities want to work, and with the right support they can work. The SEN Code of Practice is clear that all children and young people with special educational needs should be prepared for adult, including employment. We're investing £80 million in supported internship programme, which is very successful, and we'll be doubling this by March 2025. And we're working with DWP on a number of programmes, and following the Buckland Review, the DWP is setting up a task group to consider all the recommendations.
Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With a 60% rise in complex needs funding over 5 years, reaching £10.5 billion in 2024-25, £105 million of funding for special free schools in the spring budget, and the Special Educational Needs and Disabilities and Alternative Provision Plan to support everyone with needs and disabilities to age 25. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that it's this Conservative government that is working hard for the life chances for every child in our country?
Absolutely right, and he's right. You know, we should take no lessons from the opposition on supporting children with SEN. Let's not forget that the number of children benefiting from being in special schools fell, probably because there was no specific high needs funding for local authorities at all to support people with special educational needs. And in contrast, we're investing record funding, and we're obviously building more places than we ever have in our country's history. Only the Conservatives have a plan to support children with SEN.
Caroline Ansell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In all my years in teaching before I came to this place, I only experienced one episode of violence at the hands of a student when they hurled a chair at me across the classroom. I was 6 months pregnant then. One in all those many, many years. But increasingly, teaching staff are telling me that this is becoming more and more commonplace, and in fact they expect it. My most recent conversation was Saturday, when a teaching assistant said that finally they had been forced to retire because they couldn't cope with the stress anymore. Some of this will be unmet, unrecognised special educational needs, and I thank the Secretary of State for outlining all the provisions that are being made, and indeed I have a new special school in my constituency, some not. Would she meet with me to discuss some very specific local concerns?
Yes, I'm sorry to hear about the situation of a teacher in her constituency. Of course, good behaviour is the bedrock of school and school standards. We are investing more in behaviour hubs, which are helping schools who need help with the behaviour of children. We're also investing more in alternative provision schools. We're building 77 new ones. 51 are already opened, and the rest will be opening in the coming years.
Vicky Ford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In Essex, it's been taking far too long for children to get their educational health and care plan, so I was very pleased to hear that the County Council has just recruited 46 additional members of staff They're also building new special schools, 2 more in Chelmsford. But what can make a difference, Mr Speaker, is specialist hubs within mainstream schools, helping children both from that school and from neighbouring schools. So given that we have very large numbers of schools being rebuilt in Essex due to RAC, does she agree this could provide an opportunity and we should look at all of our schools that are due to be rebuilt and consider putting a specialist hubs into these rebuilding programmes?
Well, the Honourable Lady mentions the considerable investment that's going into special educational needs and high needs budget, but also the provision for capital to build new free schools and school places. And of course, as we also look to rebuild some of the schools from RAC, which has now all been identified and every school has their budget details, then of course we would work and urge local authorities to look at what will best meet the needs of their young people in their area, and our free school places are quite flexible as well to look at what they want to come forward with in terms of provision that's needed to address the local need.
Shadow Minister Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Quorum's 2024 childcare survey found just 6% of local authorities are confident they will have enough childcare places for disabled children. High-quality early years education is absolutely essential in ensuring children's needs are identified at the most important time for their development. The Children's Minister did not give a clear answer on this last month, and his statement last week made no reference to disabled children. Is the Secretary of State really confident that every eligible family with a disabled child has been able to access a childcare place as part of the April expansion? Yes or no?
Secretary of State.
Well, I will expand on the yes or no, as the Honourable Lady wants a clear answer and hasn't obviously heard the clear answers she's been given before. Local authorities have statutory duty to provide the places for all children, including those with special educational needs. But we are working with organisations like Dingley's Promise to review special educational needs inclusion and to see what more we can do to encourage providers to further look at what they can do to provide places. But we are sure that local authorities will work with local authorities to make sure that we improve this.
Mary Rimmer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question number 2.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The proportion of apprentices who achieved their apprenticeship standard rose to 54.3% in 22-23. That's up 2.9 percentage points on the year before. We are taking action to ensure that every apprentice has a high-quality experience. We're reviewing and improving standards with poor achievement rates, investing £7.5 million in a provider workforce development programme, and Ofsted will be inspecting all providers by 2025.
Mary Rimmer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Giving all young people a good education is key to levelling up our country. Yet the number of starting apprenticeships has fallen by a third over the last decade, and completions 3% less now than they were 3 years ago. So we've improved on that year, but we're not there yet. Why is the government letting this slide, the number of apprenticeships available to offer, and why does he think that young people are not qualifying in this rate that they were 2 years ago?
Can I thank the Honourable Lady for her question? We want all young people to have access to good, high-quality apprenticeships because they offer a valuable experience and the opportunity to upskill at the start of their career. We have seen a 4% increase in apprenticeship starts by young people under 19 so far this year, and 57% of all starts have been by those aged under 25. In our own constituency, we saw a 21% increase in apprenticeship achievements last year, so it's good news to welcome, but of course there's always more to be done. Very happy to work with her on the issue too.
Robert Halford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Is it not the case that apprenticeship achievements have actually gone up by 22% over the past year, and over 90% of apprentices who complete their apprenticeship get good jobs or good skills, and starts are going up as well? Is it not also the case that we now have over 690 quality apprenticeship standards in everything from aeronautical to zoology, and any attempt to dilute the apprenticeship levy would not only destroy the number of starts significantly, but also harm achievements. And it's this side of the House that's building an apprenticeship and skills nation.
Minister.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for his question? During his time as a minister, he helped completely rebuild the apprenticeship system, introducing higher quality standards. Apprenticeships are now longer, they are better, they've got more off-the-job training with proper independent assessment at the end. They're more valued by employers, and we've seen 5.8 million starts since 2010. He is an incredible advocate for further education. I learned very quickly that I have big shoes to fill following on the role from him, but I look forward to working with him to ensure that we continue delivering in this area.
Mr. Stephen Malfoster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The truth is that not only have apprenticeship starts plummeted since 2017, but new data shows the overall achievement rate has dropped since 2020, with level 2 apprenticeships hit hardest. Almost half of apprentices don't complete their courses, and that simply isn't good enough. Employers are calling out for reform, but this government has its head in the sand. Isn't this yet more evidence that far from tackling barriers to opportunity and boosting Britain's skills, the government is failing our young people and our businesses, and only Labour has a plan to turn this around?
Mr. Speaker, we have made apprenticeships more rigorous. They're now more credible. They're designed by employers with proper, robust assessments. The only plan Labour have is, without more funding, is to cut the number of apprenticeship starts in our country by 60%. And she obviously missed the figures that were published last week, which showed a 2.5% increase in level 2 attainment rates too. We are delivering high-quality standards with more off-the-job training, something which should be welcomed across the House.
Tom Hunt.
Number 3, Mr. Speaker.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will take questions 3 and 11 together. Having undertaken a review of the special educational needs system, we published our improvement plan last year. Provision is regularly reviewed through school and local area inspections by Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission. We also collect and review data on EHCPs, including timeliness and volumes, and on capacity in special schools, SEND units and resourced provision.
Mr. Speaker, last week I met with the Chief Executive of a chain of independent schools, which includes a lot of independent special schools. Approximately 40% of the children there have got special educational needs. She was concerned about any proposal to put VAT on school fees. She feels all this will do is put up school fees, and a lot of parents who are just about managing to send their kids to independent special schools would take them out, putting more pressure on the state education centre system. Does the Minister share my concern that this policy may, they think, be smart politics, but it may be people with special educational needs, including those with low incomes, who may pay the price for a short-sighted policy proposal?
Minister.
Well, my honourable friend is a great champion of children with special educational needs, and he's absolutely right. Labour's ideological obsession with private schools means they will even charge children who are in an independent special school for their needs 20% VAT, making it harder for those families to afford the provision they need and driving up demand for places in state special schools. It's just another example of the mess they'd make of our education system.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The inequality in the funding formula is driving inequality for children with special educational needs. In York, we are seeing not only the lack of placements that are needed, but also staff being laid off because there's an adequacy of funding. In the light that we know that the number of children with SEND is growing exponentially in York, will he not only review the funding formula to ensure that it's fair, but to give local authorities the power and provision to provide for the future needs of our city?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, York is in our safety valve programme to support the financial challenges it has seen a 27% increase in the per head funding in the last 3 financial years. On the funding formula, we do review it every year. The biggest complaint people have is the historic factor, which is difficult to reduce quickly because there are children receiving that provision at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Wirral Forest Special School in Kidderminster, whilst doing an absolutely fantastic job for a number of years, has been running way past its maximum capacity for some time. Relief was potentially shown when its next door Baxter College was secured funding from a generous grant from the School Rebuilding Programme for a mutually beneficial rebuilding to expand capacity on both sides. But with this project being in phase 3, Wirral Forest Special School and Baxter College may have to wait until 2032 before they can see any sort of beneficial release. Will my right honourable friend or my friend meet with me and the two heads of the schools to come along and perhaps discuss how we can expedite getting this rebuilding programme underway?
Very happily meet with my right honourable friend.
Ellen Morgan.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. I met a lady on Saturday who has moved within Shropshire but into North Shropshire, and it took 10 weeks for her Year 9 son with SEN to be placed in a school. He's been placed in a school without any one-to-one support, which is a big downgrade on his previous situation. And his parents reported to me that all he has received from the school is detention for not completing his work fast enough. We are desperately short of special educational needs places in Shropshire. Can the Minister reassure me that the government are looking at Shropshire and working to provide proper provision for those children who are being so badly let down?
I obviously can't comment on the Honourable Lady's specific constituent's case, but what I can tell her is that we're in the process of creating 60,000 more special school places, 108 schools already open and 92 approved to open.
Craig Tracy.
Question 4, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it is well and widely recognised that PE and sport support children and young people's health and their general well-being. The School Sport and Activity Action Plan update in July 2023 sets out how we'll support all young people to participate in PE and sport in school.
Craig Tracy.
Thank the Minister for that response. I recently hosted an event here in Parliament with Nick Doherty, the golfer, and the Golf Foundation to kick off their Unleash Your Drive event, which is an amazing initiative which looks at providing young people the life skills they need to survive in the modern world, including mental resilience. Scheme's been rolled out to over 500 schools since September last year with fantastic results. So would the Minister agree to meet with me and the Golf Foundation to discuss this success and look how we can encourage more schools to teach mental toughness skills through sport as part of the School Sport and Activity Action Plan?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I do know of the good work of the Golf Foundation under the leadership of Brendan Pyle, and I will of course be very happy to meet my honourable friend to discuss their work and specifically the Unleash Your Drive programme.
Tim Farron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sports, PE and outdoor education have a huge impact on building resilience amongst young people, helping them to have a love of learning as well as a love of the outdoors, which would be great for them for the whole of their lives. I wonder if the Minister would agree with me that it is a great shame that the Welsh Senedd voted down by one single vote his colleague and my friend Sam Rowland's bill just the other week that would have made outdoor education an experience that every young person in Wales would be able to access. Would he go one further and back my equivalent outdoor education bill due for its second reading on the 21st of June so that this place ensures that every young person in primary school and in secondary school has the ability to access for free an outdoor education experience?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman, right honourable gentleman, is entirely consistent and has been for quite some time in talking about the importance of outdoor education, which I'm very happy to agree with him about. I'm not sure it's always necessarily a case of law, but it certainly has a very important place for young people to get outdoors, to be in touch with nature, to see the countryside, as well as be running around and enjoying PE and sporting activity.
Bob Blackman.
Question number 8, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I have been horrified, appalled to see the rise in anti-Semitism in education since October the 7th. It is unacceptable. It cannot be tolerated. Now, my right honourable friend has written to all schools and colleges, reminding them of their duties under Prevent, and we're investing £7 million to help tackle anti-Semitism across education.
Bob Blackman.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my right honourable friend for that answer. Clearly, he's right. The rise of anti-Semitism in schools and anywhere is absolutely unacceptable. But one of the causes for this is the failure of schools to teach children about the history of Israel, the fact that Jewish people have occupied Israel for over 3,000 years, and indeed the Balfour Declaration set up the creation of the modern state of Israel. Because that is not actually communicated, there is widespread ignorance, and people don't believe that Jewish people have occupied that land for so long. Can he therefore conduct a review of the curriculum to ensure that young people are properly educated in the history of Israel?
Well, Mr. Speaker, look, I appreciate what my honourable friend says, and obviously history is a very important subject for many reasons. I would say that learning about Israel and about the wider region can be covered in history. For example, in the theme that is
called Challenges for Britain, Europe and the Wider World since 1901. In general, in our national curriculum, we do not specify individual historical events, the sole exception, as he will know, being the Holocaust.
Champ.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Minister very much for his very positive response? I think it's very helpful. What discussions has the Minister had with counterparts in the devolved nations, in particular Northern Ireland? Because I make the point, Mr. Speaker, because we've had two different groups, the Nationalists and Unionists, the Protestants and Roman Catholics, but yet no, they've been able to have an education and an understanding where they can look towards each other with not the suspicion that there had been perhaps 20, 30 years ago. So has the Minister had any chance to talk to the devolved nations to ascertain whether introducing compulsory education on the importance in combating anti-Semitism is something that is possible, taking the Northern Ireland example as one that works? Thank you.
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I always value opportunities to speak with colleagues and counterparts from devolved administration. We will have another opportunity, I believe, relatively soon in Northern Ireland to speak to his colleague, the Minister, and I have no doubt that this will be one of the things that we will wish to talk about.
We come to SNP spokesperson Carol Monahan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is right that young people can recognise and denounce anti-Semitism, and it is right that they know something of the history of the region, including the continued expansion of illegal settlements. But I hope the Minister would agree that right-wing rhetoric and Islamophobia also pose a threat to our young people. So I would ask him what steps are being taken to ensure that both anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hate are treated with equal severity, especially given some of the Islamophobic remarks that have been made by members and former members of his own party.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Lady is quite right to call out the wickedness of Islamophobia, and there have been, of course, Islamophobic incidents in school as well. And Tell Mama, I think, is a very important resource in that regard. We will not tolerate anti-Muslim hatred in any form, and we will seek to stamp it out whenever and wheresoever it occurs.
Madam Kesar. Not here. Could the Minister answer as though it is in order to bring the front bench in?
Speaker, I can, of course. I may ask his forbearance to bear with me for one second. Ministers normally meet with devolved governments, as we were just discussing a moment ago. The Education Ministers' Council was due to meet in late 2023, hosted by the Scottish Government. But although we have been watching our doormats, no invitation has arrived. The UK Government is providing £108 billion over 2022 to 2023 to 24-25 to help with the cost of living.
Let's go to Shadow Minister Catherine McKinnell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the cost of living, of concerns raised by parents in response to the most recent National Parent Survey by Parentkind, the cost of school uniforms, trips and food came up the most. Labour has a plan to cut the cost of school uniforms by limiting the number of branded items, and our free breakfast clubs in every primary school will put money back in parents' pockets whilst improving attendance and attainment. We've done the government's homework, and they're still failing families. Will it take a Labour government to give every child in this country the chances they deserve?
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate what she says, but I'm afraid she does need to keep up, because the things on restricting the cost pressures of uniforms we have done, and we also regularly survey how much it is costing, and some of those results are encouraging. We also survey regularly the number of schools that have a second-hand uniform facility available, and I'm pleased to be able to report that that has also improved. When it comes to school trips, we're also very clear that when a trip is, for example, part of the national curriculum, an essential thing to do, then that should not be charged. But I know that in excess of that, many schools, way many schools, will make sure they are always providing inclusivity for all pupils. And of course, the pupil premium that we introduced shortly after 2010 is one of the things that facilitates that.
Number 10, sir.
Minister.
To move myself back, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for his question. I thank him for his ongoing, continuing support with this new school, and particularly actually his personal work to make sure that there will be provision for boys and girls. And we're working with his Council and sponsoring trust to agree a provisional opening date for Hanwood Park Free School as soon as possible.
Mr. Speaker, the new Hanwood Park Free School is a key part of the future educational infrastructure in Kettering and will be located in the heart of the Hanwood Park development, which with 5,500 houses is one of the largest housing developments in the whole country. Will my right honourable friend, the Schools Minister, please facilitate a meeting in Kettering with the Department's Regional Director for the East Midlands, for myself, together with the Local Education Authority, the Orbis Academy Trust and the Hanwood Park developer, so that we can ensure together that the school build is coordinated as best as possible?
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, I commend him for his own work, and I do also appreciate how important it is that we have provision of local services, and none more important than education when there is housing development. I'd be very pleased to convene such a meeting as he requests.
Sir David.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 12.
Secretary of State.
Since 2010, we have completely transformed how we teach reading in England, expanding the evidence-based methods of phonics across all of our schools. In 2011-12, phonics screening checks, only 58% of our children met the expected standard of reading. Now, thanks to these reforms and the hard work of our brilliant teachers, not only is that number now 79%, our primary school children have now also been ranked 4th best readers in the world. We're sticking to our plan, delivering higher reading standards across our schools.
David.
I thank my right honourable friend for that very positive response. In 2011-12, only 63% of children in my borough of Bexley met the expected standard of reading. Now, after the evidence-based reforms from this Conservative government, that number is 81%, a real achievement. However, there is still much more to be done, but does my right honourable friend share my disappointment that the Labour Party have always opposed these reforms at every possible opportunity?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right. The Conservatives had a plan to completely reform our reading standards, expand phonics across our schools, which have meant our primary school children are now the 4th best readers in the world. And what was Labour's response to this? They said phonics wouldn't work, that our literacy drive was dull, and that free schools were dangerous. What's dangerous is the risk of a Labour government who will collapse educational standards as they have done in Wales.
Christopher Clarkson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 13.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've seen year-on-year growth in degree-level apprenticeships. Starts at levels 6 and 7 increased by 5.8% this year. There are now over 170 employer-designed degree-level apprenticeships, and we're providing an additional £40 million over 2 years to support providers to expand their offers.
Chris Clarkson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I had the pleasure of hosting members of this House, representatives of industry and representatives of the education sector to discuss how we could leverage the resources of the private sector to support further education through a lecturer reservist programme. Can I particularly thank my honourable friend the Minister for Skills, his predecessor the Right Honourable Member for Harlow, and Hayley Pells of the Institute of the Motor Industry for all their hard work in making that meeting a reality and for their positive engagement. And of course I wouldn't be doing my job properly, Mr. Speaker, if I wasn't cheeky and asked my honourable friend the Minister if he'll be willing to join us for our next meeting when we flesh out the proposals that we discussed at the last one.
Minister.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for his question? I thought we had an excellent meeting last week on this issue. We had really positive discussions around the ideas around the exciting lecturer reservist pilot that will be running in the West Midlands, which will bring together those regional employers, colleges and providers. I'm looking forward to working closely with him as the pilot progresses and very much look forward not just to meeting him again, but by visiting the pilot when it's up and running.
Yasmin Qureshi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In January, the number of applications to study... 14. Oh, my apologies. Number... Oh, I thought...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our reforms make the student loan system more sustainable and fairer for graduates and for taxpayers. Tuition fees have been frozen until 24-25, and it was the actions of this government to cap the interest rate on student loans because we believe everybody in our country should have access to a world-class higher education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In January, the number of applications to study nursing fell by 7.4%. The Royal College of Nursing has said that this could be a direct threat to patient safety. Surely the government should be doing everything it can to boost recruitment of nursing, but instead last September it introduced a tuition fee system, which means that future nursing graduates will be paying an extra £48 per month. Why is the Secretary of State penalising people who choose to work in our vital public services?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. The system that we have introduced is a progressive one because lifetime earnings now correlate with the amount that somebody contributes. So the highest earners make the largest individual contributions and the lowest earners contribute the least. So, for example, if you leave university in 2026 earning £26,000 a year, you'll pay now just £7 a month at repaying that loan. And crucially, the new interest rate is reduced from RPI plus 3 to RPI plus 0, so it makes that more affordable too. It's a progressive student. We think it's fairer for students and fairer for taxpayers.
Shadow Minister Matt Weston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my right honourable friend put it so eloquently, and apologies, I should have welcomed him to his place. It's good to see the member for Thornbury and Yate in his new role, and of course to miss the former minister, the member for right honourable member for Harlow. Just to pick up on the point that's so well illustrated by my colleague, we are in real danger of dissuading and disenfranchising so many young people from getting into the sorts of careers that they are interested in doing, particularly in those sorts of roles such as nursing. So I want to just reiterate that point. We have seen a 7.3% decline in the numbers of applications for nursing at a time when we desperately need more in our health service. Really, what is the Minister doing? Does he really think it's a fair system that's been introduced ahead of him joining the education team?
Minister.
Well, can I thank the gentleman for his words welcoming me to my post. The point I make about the trends in the cycle is that if you look at the 2023 cycle, that shows numbers rebalancing and returning to a trend of normal growth in applications following the pandemic. He should also look, I think, at the impact of nursing apprenticeships, which are having a big impact on the system, and nursing degree apprenticeships too. Of course, I'm always happy to meet with him to discuss these issues, but we do think this is a fairer, more affordable system, both to students and to taxpayers, and will result in more people being able to access a world-class higher education in our country.
Question 15, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ofsted outcomes are strong for the 5 special schools in Bournemouth, and departmental officials continue to work with the council and other services to support rapid improvements, including £16.4 million of high needs capital funding between 2022 and 2025, and their funding allocation this year is £60.9 million, which is a 27% increase per head compared to 21-22.
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for that reply. He speaks about increased funding, but there is growing anger from head teachers and indeed parents alike in Bournemouth about the mismanagement of the dedicated schools grant over the last couple of years by BCP Council. And school heads have now taken the unprecedented step of writing open letters to the Council of concern. The Council's not following the required guidance and demanding unaffordable sums from schools, which, if implemented, would see the loss of teaching assistants. So can I please ask the Department of Education to investigate the Council's decision-making to ensure correct guidelines are followed in the future and ensure that the right levels of funding stay with the schools?
Minister.
Well, my right honourable friend has done an excellent job of raising with me repeatedly the frustration of parents and head teachers in his constituency with BCP Council. It's something that myself and officials continue to monitor closely to make sure that schools and children in his area are getting the provision they deserve.
Christopher Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How many children in schools in Bournemouth have relied on SEND provision because they've had an acquired brain injury in the last 5 years? And if the Minister doesn't know the answer, he might not know it today, would he be able to write to me? And if his officials are not able to provide him with an answer, will he make sure that the department establishes precisely how many children in all of our schools across the whole of the country have had an acquired brain injury in the last 5 years?
Minister.
I didn't know his constituency was so close to Bournemouth, Mr. Speaker. But as he suggests, I do not have the precise answer to that question, and I will write to him.
Wirral.
Number 16, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Early language skills are vital for children to thrive. That is why we carried out landmark early education reforms, investing up to £180 million in training, qualifications and support, and providing a range of evidence-based interventions from home learning to working with local health services.
There is growing evidence how important it is to provide support for speech and language development in nurseries and for preschool-aged children. And programmes like the Languages for Life programme, which is supported by St John's Foundation in Bath, underpins the work that schools are doing. And just to demonstrate how well they are doing, the percentage of children that needed additional language support in schools that participated reduced from 84 to 29%, and I'm sure the Minister will want to congratulate the schools and St John's Foundations for the work they're doing. Will the government prioritise these speech and language programmes, such as Languages for Life?
Well, what the Honourable Lady sets out sounds very encouraging, and I look forward to hearing more about the Languages for Life programme. We've been very pleased with the findings of the government-funded Nuffield Early Language Intervention, which is different, but has also focused on language development and found to help children make 4 months additional development in their oral language skills, and to help disadvantaged children make 7 months additional progress.
Can the Minister give us an update on the delivery of the first phase of the free childcare entitlement that's happened this month? And also, can I urge him to make sure that we deliver phase 2 on time in September?
Minister.
Well, I'm delighted to tell the Right Honourable Lady and the House that the first phase of this rollout went very well indeed, with 200,000 children now benefiting from the first stage of the rollout, something that the members on those benches doubted could happen, but we've shown again that we had a plan, and they have absolutely none.
Question 17, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady for her question, but I'm afraid there is a flawed premise within it. School funding at £60.7 billion is in fact the highest it has ever been in real terms per pupil, and it's a real terms increase of 5.5% per pupil nationally compared to 2010-11.
Thank the Education Minister for his response, but what he's saying about the state of school funding is not the full picture, and he knows it. Schools' costs have increased much faster than funding. In fact, analysis by the National Education Union showed that every single school in Nottingham East had less funding last year in real terms than they did 14 years ago. That's £1,266 less per pupil on average. If the government really cared about the future of children and young people, shouldn't it be funding high-quality education instead of whipping up culture wars?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we are funding high-quality education, and the quality of that education is seen in the results, which, whether you look at 15-year-olds' performance in mathematics and English and science, or you look at primary school children's results, you see results which have dramatically improved since 2010. And on the specific question of the NEU analysis, I'm afraid it is flawed in multiple respects, one of which is that it doesn't include a number for the high needs budget at all, which has grown so much, and also it doesn't actually use real numbers for 2010.
Speaker, on the subject of school budgets, will the Minister join me in welcoming the letter I received this week from Malvern College in Worcestershire? Not only are they one of the largest employers in Worcestershire, but this independent school contributes £28 million to the local economy, and it would also be a huge cost to the public purse for the over 300 pupils that currently pay fees if they had to be educated in local schools.
Well, Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend is exactly correct that in the event of this party getting into government, there will be a hike in cost of going to private schools, which would push a number of families out of that provision. We do not know how many. They do not know how many. Neither does anybody else know how many. But we do know it is some, and it may be very many, who would come into the state-funded system, causing great strain and possible cuts affecting other children.
We come to topical, Sir David Davis.
Number one, Sir.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And with your permission, I would like to start by sending our thoughts and prayers to the whole school and community in Ammanford in Wales. With the exam season nearly upon us, I want to wish all of our students and teachers the very best of luck over the coming months. We should be very proud of all the progress our students and teachers have made, with 90% of schools now rated good or outstanding, up from 68% under Labour. And in the internationally renowned PISA rankings, our secondary school children have rocketed up the rankings from 27th and 25th in the world for maths and reading under Labour to 11th and 13th now. The establishment of the Educational Endowment Foundation, which has conducted nearly 20% of all randomised controlled trials in education in the world, is adding to this success. This fantastic progress is testament to the hard work of our schools and the evidence-based reforms we've taken since 2010.
Sir David Davis.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. On a personal level, can I thank the Secretary of State for sponsoring my charity event for children disabled with SINGAP 1 yesterday. And so, of course, I welcome the government's funding of 60,000 new school places for children with special educational needs. But we need a fairer funding formula for these resources. We need a further £4.6 billion just to prevent the crisis in special needs getting worse. So what steps is the government taking to ensure that funding is allocated according to need and not postcode?
Secretary of State.
Well, I want to thank my right honourable friend who is doing exceptional work raising awareness of the impacts of SINGAP 1 and raising, I think, over £29,000 so far to support vital research. As the honourable gentleman points out, we are investing record amounts into SEND funding. We do review this every year, and we do look at the formula every year, and this has actually gone up 60% in the last 5 years to 10.5 billion. But I'm very happy and I look forward to meeting my right honourable friend. We said we would have a cup of tea to talk about this important topic, and I'll get that date in diary soon.
Shadow Secretary of State Bridget Phillips.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'd like to associate myself with the comments from the Secretary of State and send my thoughts and best wishes to all of those in the school community of Ammanford at this very difficult time. Mr Speaker, the extension does not achieve its primary aim or demonstrate value for money. A damning line from the National Audit Office report into the government's childcare expansion. For months, the Secretary of State has told parents and providers that they were wrong to be concerned. Yet now we learn even her own department considers delivery to be problematic. Her own failure exposed. Why hasn't she listened and got a serious plan in place? Or is she simply waiting for Labour to publish ours so that she can steal it?
Mr Speaker, I don't think anyone in the country is waiting for Labour to publish theirs. I mean, of course, and this is serious, because of course we are ambitious, and delivering the largest expansion of childcare in our country's history is not an easy task, but that's the job of government, and that's what we're doing. Thanks to this expansion, over 200,000 more children are getting childcare support. But the real question is, because we are already delivering, and we've put the deliverability into 3 phases to make sure that we continue to deliver. And we know what we need. We need places, we need workforce, and we need the children. But Labour have absolutely no plan. First, they criticised our childcare model, then they said they'd scrap it. Now they're saying it's not their job to have a plan. It's time for Labour to stop talking down our childcare sector and commit to supporting our plan, which is clearly working.
Bridget Phillipson.
Nonsense, Mr Speaker. What people right across this country want is a general election, and it cannot come soon enough. And it's not only on childcare where the Secretary of State is in a total mess. School leaders, teachers and staff have been dismayed by her failure to reform Ofsted. She simply refuses to listen to staff, to the Education Select Committee, or indeed to parents. And under Labour, I'm clear that the days of one-word judgments will come to an end. So when can we expect the Secretary of State to follow Labour's lead and commit to ending Ofsted's headline grades?
Well, we won't follow Labour's lead, because in 2010 only 68% of schools were rated good or outstanding, and now, thanks to our reforms and hard work, that's up to 90%. And of course, we've already delivered a number of changes to improve the way Ofsted carries out its inspections. But the answer to these challenges is not watering down standards by abolishing Ofsted, as Labour twice proposed to do. This accountability is one reason why 90% of our schools are good or outstanding, up from just 68% under Labour. And in the last year alone, over 200,000 more children are attending good or outstanding schools because of the work that we do in improving standards, and Ofsted is an important part of that.
Swain.
Are powers available to her where schools refuse to implement her guidance on social transitioning?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we expect schools do follow the guidance, because they are guidance to help them carry out their existing statutory duties, including safeguarding. If they did not do so, if they did not take those into account in delivering those duties, they would be at risk of breach.
We come to SNP spokesperson Carol Monaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the Secretary of State for mentioning the exam season, and I'm sure she'll include the Scottish young people sitting their exams, whose exams started last week, so they're already in the throes of it. But I'd like to ask about deep fake images, because these images and nudification apps pose massive threats to the mental health of girls in particular, and therefore their educational outcomes. I'm pleased that the government has taken steps to criminalise the creation of such images. But I would ask, how is the Secretary of State working with Cabinet colleagues to put pressure on internet companies to take radical action necessary to remove such images that can have such an impact on girls' education?
Well, Mr. Speaker, she is of course right that the lead is taken by a different government department, but we are very, very conscious of the pressures, including from social media and including from pornography and including from deep fake, as she rightly identifies, and nudification, and we're working right across government to make sure those pressures can be eased.
David Simmons.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bearing out feedback from my two excellent local Conservative councils, a recent report from the London Council's organisation highlights a 4.3% drop in the numbers of pupils in schools in Hellingdon. So will my honourable friend commit, at a time of falling numbers on rolls in Outer London, to work with our schools and our local authorities, in particular, to promote the opportunities for more inclusion for SEND pupils in mainstream schools?
My honourable friend makes two important points. There has been a 6% decline in the number of 0 to 4-year-olds between 2015 and 2021, and we are providing £242 million this financial year to support schools with managing this. He's also right that while some children will always need a special school place to have their needs met, many can have their needs met in a mainstream school, and through our Send an AP improvement plan, we are making sure that schools are inclusive and make that happen.
Lloyd Russell-Moyle.
The Secretary of State described special educational needs as lose, lose, lose when she was describing the process of parents appealing the judgments of EHCPs, which I earlier talked about them often putting the school that was inadequate down. How does she expect parents to get the right school if it is not to appeal? And who has broken the system in the last 14 years? Because it wasn't like that before.
The Honourable Gentleman, actually, what I was referring to was the fact that parents didn't feel they were receiving the best service from the system. The schools didn't feel they were giving the best service. Government felt they were spending a lot more, which is why it was very important that we got a grip and fix the system. Of course, what we do know is that there'd been a massive increase in demand over the last few years, not even 14 years, massive increase in demand. So we've had to put in place the Special Educational Needs Improvement Plan and Alternative Provision Improvement Plan, which is very thorough, and I believe as a result of that plan it will be win-win-win.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What steps is the Department taking to make apprenticeships in building trades more attractive to young people and especially to women and girls?
Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend for his question and for all of his work on this area? I know he's been absolutely integral to the I Am a House Builder campaign to encourage more women into the building sector. Our Apprenticeship Diversity Champions Network is supporting gender representation amongst employers, and it's good news that STEM starts continue to increase year on year, up 7.5% in the last year, but there's more to do. I look forward to working closely with him on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Cash Review has established that social transitioning
is not a neutral act and introduces significant risk of harm. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that when a new First Minister emerges in Scotland, they should commit to factual, science-based education in schools and implement the CAS review findings in full so they don't suffer the same fate as their predecessor?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I would encourage our friends and colleagues in the Scottish Government, whomsoever it may be at the time, to pay close attention to the CAS report. I think her work has injected some much-needed common sense into the debate, and we are very grateful to her. This government will always put the safety of our children first, and that's why the gender questioning guidance that we produced in draft was underpinned by the important principle of parents always being involved in decisions about their children.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberal Democrat-run council in Rutland has announced they will close our specialist and outstanding rated SEND nursery, The Parks. This comes then the further news they're also going to close our only leisure centre. The community are rightly devastated, especially parents who want their children to get the best and most expert support. So does my right honourable friend agree that specialist provision must be protected, and it's absolutely vital, and it's likely that need for this kind of provision is only going to increase?
Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend? She's absolutely right. And we have been hearing negative things about Lib Dem councils on both sides of their house this afternoon. Sadly, not surprising. She's absolutely right to be championing the needs of her parents and those children. And I hope they will listen to her campaign and do the right thing.
Paul the Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is no doubt that this department has contributed to the chaos surrounding the opening of King's Leadership Academy in my constituency. Parents and children find themselves in utter limbo, and this debacle has caused extra pressure on school places across Liverpool. In reply to me, Baroness Barron provided absolutely no explanation why it had taken the department until the 1st of February to apply for planning permission despite having owned the site since last summer. When will this department get a grip, end the blame game and commit to exhausting every avenue in getting the school open in September?
Mr. Speaker, I will look into the details of the case and I will write to her.
Right. Peter Alders.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Research by London Economics and the Association of Colleges highlights that in recent years there's been a significant drop in Level 2 apprenticeship starts. I'd be most grateful if my right honourable friend could outline the specific work that has been carried out to reverse this decline, which is so vital in promoting social mobility and levelling up.
Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend for his question? Level 2 and 3 apprenticeships make up 65% of all starts so far this year, and there are almost 140 apprenticeships at Level 2. We did also publish data last week to show that Level 2 apprenticeships rose by 2.5% in terms of attainment. We'll do everything we can to make sure people have access to high-quality apprenticeships, and we've also invested £50 million over 2 years to boost starts in growth sectors like engineering and manufacturing. Always happy to meet my honourable friend.
5 years on from the approval of a new secondary school in my Middlesbrough constituency, not a brick has been laid and the children of Outwood Riverside remain in an old Home Office block, and the next 2 years' intake are going to be bused to Redcar to porter cabins plonked on a field. Children are spending their entire secondary school years in temporary accommodation, and it's just not good enough. Can the Secretary of State tell ministerial colleagues to get a grip and crack on with building the new school these students need and deserve?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we have increased the amount of money going into condition funding. We're also, of course, rebuilding 500 schools on the school rebuilding programme. I will look into the specific case that he mentions and I will come back to him.
Alexander Stafford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My right honourable friend will be aware of my campaign to improve literacy across the country by improving children's access to libraries in their schools' communities. There is, though, much that can be done by parents, grandparents and carers in the years before children start school. What is the department doing to improve access to books and audiobooks in particular and other literary materials for preschool children?
Minister.
My honourable friend raises an excellent point. Reading is one of the most important things children can be doing at a young age. Our Little Moments Together campaign provides free resources for parents to encourage a positive culture of reading at home, and we also fund the National Literacy Trust, which does great work to promote reading.
McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister give us an update on the schools-based work of the Youth Endowment Fund on trying to stop young people being involved in or getting involved in crime? And can he tell us how the success of that work would be judged?
Minister.
Can I thank the Honourable Lady? As it happens, I'm meeting the Director of the Youth Endowment Foundation in the morning. We have a quarterly meeting to review progress and make sure it's on track.
Sir Julian Lewis.
To the earlier worrying topic of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in schools, will ministers please bear in mind sections 406 and 407 of the 1996 Education Act? The former bans political indoctrination in schools, and the latter says that when political subjects are brought to the attention of pupils, they must be presented in a fair and balanced way.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend's reminder is a timely one and an important one, and we are very clear on that. With schools, we also, of course, fund Educate Against Hate, which has some materials that are available, and I know schools do also seek to go to lengths in most cases to make sure that when tackling controversial current affairs, they are doing so in an entirely impartial way.
Mr. Strathern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While it's welcome ministers are finally investing in childcare, the scheme just isn't working, with local settings telling me it falls far short of what they need to meet demand, exacerbated by the especially low rate paid in central Bedfordshire. Will ministers change course to make sure that central Bedfordshire families can finally access the childcare they need?
Minister.
Well, actually, again, the first stage of this rollout has gone incredibly well, with more than 200,000 children now benefiting from this first stage. And Labour MPs should spend less time criticising our rollout and asking their front bench what their plan is, because it's supposed to be like the creation of the NHS.
Speaker, St Francis School and Heathfield School are two excellent special education needs in Fareham, which support a variety of children with conditions ranging from Down syndrome to epilepsy. But around the country, there are 95,000 children at independent special education needs school. Does my right honourable friend agree that Labour's misguided attack on independent schools will be harmful and punitive to vulnerable children all around the country?
My right honourable friend is absolutely right. This is a policy to tickle the bellies of the left of the Labour Party. They did not think it through, and they are now going to whack families trying to get the right support for their children with special educational needs with 20% more in fees.
Dave Dugan.
Mr. Speaker, in 24-25, Scottish students living away from home will be entitled to a minimum £8,400 in student maintenance, whereas English students living outside London will only be getting a minimum of £4,767. Given the current cost of living crisis, which is undoubtedly a factor in the withdrawal of almost 16,000 undergraduate students in England last year, will the Government commit to providing the same encouragement and reinforcement to students in England as their students in Scotland enjoy?
Can I thank the honourable gentleman for his question? We are trying to deliver a system that is fair not just to students, but also to taxpayers too. That's why we're taking action to support students with the cost of living in England, including freezing tuition fees. We've increased loans by 2.8%, and we've made sure that if someone's family income falls by 15%, they can have their loans readdressed. It is also important that we support people from lower income households, which is why we've made a further £10 million available to include hardship funding in 2023-24. This is a system fair not just to students, but also to wider taxpayers too.
And Johnson.
Mr. Speaker, the Sir Robert Pattinson Academy in my constituency is a great school providing an excellent education to children. However, it is struggling with the challenges of an aged infrastructure, and an urgent bid to rectify the heating and wiring challenges has been refused. And an urgent meeting on Friday with officials was very unproductive, not least because the data they were looking at was out of date. So could I ask the Secretary of State to please ensure that the senior leadership team get an urgent meeting with senior officials, and that she personally ensures that this bid is looked at properly and quickly?
I will indeed, and Mr. Speaker, I know this is a subject she's brought up with me already, and also with my right honourable friend. I know there was that meeting with Mr. Hardy on Friday. I know there were two separate cases around the SIF bid and the UCS bid. We will continue to work with the school, and I will make sure that she gets that high-level meeting that she asked for.
Manera Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Amongst other cuts, the Department for Education has quietly slipped out the announcement that it is slashing funding for Now Teach, which has supported over 1,000 people to switch careers and retrain as secondary teachers in shortage subjects such as science, maths and modern languages. Why on earth is the government withdrawing funding when it is missing its teacher training targets by 50% in some of these subjects, when now teachers had such a brilliant track record in getting people to retrain as teachers?
Well, first I must say the statistics you just gave on missing recruitment targets is incorrect. It is frequently repeated but not right. But we do think that career changes are a very important part of people coming into this noble profession. We're continuing with our career changes programme. We're not axing Now Teach, we're not re-procuring it, so we're not extending it again. To put it in perspective, it is roughly, it's about 200 to 250 people in a typical year out of about 7,000 career changes coming into teaching. So we are reassessing the best ways to attract more of them, because we want to grow the number of career changes coming into teaching and make sure we go about it in the very best and most productive way.
Deputy Patel.
Speaker, the Secretary of State is well aware of the issues that we have with AET and Maltings Academy in Whitton Town. She'll know of the stories of children now missing out on school time because of exclusion, bullying, and some are even self-harming now. What assurance can she give to pupils and to their families who have very little choice as to which schools they go to locally, that their concerns will be met and they will have greater educational choice over which school their children go to?
Mr Speaker, I'm grateful to my right honourable friend. I know we've corresponded on this very recently. I know she's taken a very close personal interest and has been involved directly and personally in multiple cases. I think in my most recent letter, I'm not sure if it will have arrived yet, I've said we are going to make sure that as a department, obviously we will work with her.
Mr
Speaker, I thank the Secretary of State and the Shadows. A man in my constituency last week. There's obviously now a criminal investigation ongoing and a charge of attempted murder, so therefore it wouldn't be wise to speculate. But as education is devolved in Wales, will she pledge to work with the Welsh Government to ensure safety measures following the various investigations have completed their work?
Secretary of State.
Yes, and I can assure the honourable gentleman that I'm always willing and very ready to work with anyone from the devolved administrations.
Also.
Businesses, in particular manufacturing, speak about the challenge in filling vacancies. The solution can often be in the existing workforce, but older workers on many occasions are reluctant to take up apprenticeships. What work are we doing to encourage more older workers into the apprenticeship system?
Can I thank my honourable friend for his question? I think, crucially, working with employers is absolutely central to success on this point. That's why we're delivering the local skills improvement plans to ensure we're matching the needs of businesses and employers with the workforce they need. We are working with over 5,000 employers now, with over 700 different occupations, including skills boot camps, which do bring in different demographics to the workforce too, to ensure that we have intensive training where industries have those skills needs. But the engagement with businesses is at the forefront of our minds on this point.
Richard Ford, short.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It was reported in the Times this weekend that some Conservative MPs want to see graduate visas banned. Will the Minister ask the Home Secretary to quash this damaging rumour, given that the UK is boosted by £42 billion by international students?
Excellent. Minister.
Well, can I thank the gentleman for his question? We are home to some of the world's top universities who benefit from strong international ties. We do think it's right to try and prevent any potential abuse and protect the integrity of the higher education system, but it's also true that international students make a significant economic and cultural contribution to our education. We do believe it's possible to have that balance between a fair and robust migration policy whilst maintaining our place as a top destination for students from around the world.
Mr Speaker, thank you. Could I please thank the Education Secretary for all the support her department's giving to Bracknell Forest, particularly the £16 million safety valve programme and other SEN initiatives. Given the high number of good and outstanding schools in Bracknell and also the focus on apprenticeships and T-levels at Bracknell Woking College, might I tempt her please to visit?
Quick, yes.
Well, I'm sure it's very tempting, and we are very proud of the safety valve programme, and I would love to see it in action because it's being used across 38 local authorities, and I know it's providing a lifeline to many councils.
Final question, Sir Edward Lee.
For 14 long, weary years, I've been arguing for the end of the faith cap, which is preventing the opening of new Catholic schools and has really no proper effect. Does the Secretary of State think I should keep campaigning and be patient a bit longer?
Well, Mr Speaker, I've had an opportunity. Where's he gone? I've had an opportunity to speak with my right honourable friend on occasions about this as well. The Catholic Church The Church of England and other denominations play an absolutely central part in our education, typically having high-quality schools and typically being very popular with parents. We're also very keen to extend our Academies and Free Schools programme, which has underpinned this huge rise in quality and in children's results that we've seen since 2010. And no doubt, before too long, we may wish to put the two things closer together.
Right, that completes questions.